Online education, or we call it education tech startups, have been opening the frontiers of education far and wide in order to make education accessible and hassle-free for the students. To further deepen our understanding towards these kind of startups which are brimming with innovations, today we have with us Ms. Aditi Avasthi, founder of Embibe. Welcome to VCC TV. So, what is Embibe about?
So, you talked very rightly that there are two problems, right? The first problem is access, and the second problem is effectiveness. Because you might feel that there are some people getting educated, but for example, if you go to the state of Maharashtra and you see how many 8th standard students can even read, write, and do arithmetic, you'd be surprised at the percentage of students we think are actually going to schools and the quality of the output that is actually being produced. So, Embibe is striving to address both these problems. The first is through a state-of-the-art tech team, and people very driven about spreading education at the cheapest possible price point and making it truly accessible to everybody, be it across language, be it across device, be it across internet access or, status or economic status of a person. So the first problem we are solving is access. The second problem that we are focused on is what you don't see, which is effectiveness. That how many people who are getting educated are actually able to make the most of their potential. Right? We talk about the demographic dividend in 2020, right? That demographic dividend is going to be significantly discounted by the lack of effectiveness of education if this, problem that I highlighted is not addressed today and addressed fast. So, a bunch of us, crazy people, excited and passionate about solving this problem have come together to develop India's first truly scalable answer. Using deep data science, technology, and content which students can trust, right? To provide a personalized way for every student to not only get access to the education they want, but also to do their best at the education they choose to pursue. So that's what Embibe is.
How Embibes strive to change that? I mean, what measures you have taken and what innovation you have brought to the market?
So I think that, the first thing is, I'll go back to the day when we started up, right? When we started up, the whole market in education was about tablets and content, all right? And we were the first ones to raise the question of accountability, return on investment, and return on education. So we basically said that the answer to what people are looking for and solving the education problem is not more content, it's information. Every student needs to know what they're holding back, what's holding them back at the right time so they can fix it. To give you an example, there are a lot of students who get left behind because they don't even know that, in the IIT there is a certain subject or a certain chapter that has a certain weightage. So they might choose to ignore it, right? Or they don't even know what going to IIT actually means for them, okay? Or some students in the 8th standard may not even know that something like the IIT exists, right? Or a student in the 8th standard may not know that besides engineering and medicine, there are other options out there that give you a wildly successful career. So the reason why your path, is not optimized, and I'm sure you have your own story, around that, Nishant, right? Is that I wish I could have known that at this time. We want to remove this statement from the vocabulary of Indian students.
You call yourself a data analytics firm and you use data to counter these problems. So can you tell us about that? I mean, how does it work?
That's very interesting. So let me, we have this thing called the Embibes score quotient. All right. So first of all, I think as an education company, we've got to separate the wheat from the chaff. Okay. So the chaff is measuring an education company by the number of students enrolled and the amount of funding raised. So we've raised money as well. All right. But I don't believe that anybody in Embibe is proud about the money that they've raised. If you go and ask any Embiber, any person in our team, what are you the most proud about? They would say the fact that in a single test at the level of the IIT, we are able to improve a student's performance by 22%. Now let's talk about what that number means. All right. If you look at the IIT, there are on average about 1.4 million odd students who write the test every year, the JEE mains exam, the first exam. Okay. Out of that, less than 5% in the general category qualify to write the IIT advanced exam. That cutoff is 105 marks or 115 marks, which means it's less than a 30% score out of 360. Which means that less than more than 95% of candidates in the general category are sitting below the 115 mark number. So 1 mark is corresponding to about 10,000 ranks. If this is the math, right? Then if you can improve your score by 20% on average across hundreds of thousands of tests, think about what that does to your life. Okay, so that's the outcome. How we do it is we focus using data science on 3 core areas of improving a student. We give them prioritization to focus on these areas and these areas alone, so that they're able to improve and they have something to think about. Because teachers will just say practice, 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 and that's the answer, right? Or spend more time studying, right? What does that do? It also kills personality development, right? So what we do is we're like, look, there is something, what you know, which is how you learn and what are the gaps there, then how committed you are, and if you're demotivated, why are you demotivated? The third area is test taking technique, which is how smart a test taker you are. A lot of kids know stuff, but when they come and actually take the exam, they're not able to perform. They get anxious. Who's going to solve those problems for everybody? So we've actually developed parameters and variables and metrics which are proprietary to Embibe, okay, and they're patent pending for us, because we file patents around them, that actually help a student understand what's holding him back. If he makes careless mistakes, why is he making careless mistakes? And we've identified an automated way to detect a careless mistake, for example. So when a student hears all of this, we are seeing that in a single test, their behavior becomes in the right direction, the commitment comes in the right direction, their test taking technique improves, and then they get more marks from what they have learnt. After that has happened, their will to learn more increases, because nothing succeeds like success, including in the life of a student.
What innovation you have brought to the market?
We are probably, we're talking about what innovations you've introduced. I think for the first time we've introduced a way to calibrate the paper to the true level of the exam. If you look at the 2014 and 15 results of Embibe, the level of the JEE paper and the score the student gets there versus the score student gets on Embibe, there is a 92% overlap. So which means you can trust this source of information, and when you're improving, you're genuinely improving. Okay, so there's a reason why we started with the JEE paper, okay, and the medical paper, because as a platform we can do any kind of exam, any kind of level, any kind of grade, and the plans for the future are translating it into many regional languages, and introducing all boards from 6th onwards, standard onwards at a national level. So the innovation that we've actually done is that we've been able to create predictability in this content, okay, so that students, in the multiple layers of conflicting advice that they're getting through multiple money-making machines that surround them with the promise of getting them through, right, they're able to see the real guiding light. Says, okay, this is actually where I stand, this is actually what I need to improve, and this is actually where I can get to. So we started with the JEE, as I was saying, because JEE is the toughest exam in the world. It has the lowest yield. If our system can prove score improvement for the JEE, it can do it for anything. So it's been a long journey, and I think that for us, we are of the firm belief that learning outcomes, or the ability to create a genuine impact in the outcomes of a student, is going to be the foundation of a truly successful education company. Okay. After that comes growth, after that comes engagement, and after that comes money. Okay, this is one other reason why we have made Embibe completely free for students to come and consume, because we don't want there to be any gap in how they're actually learning. There are plenty of other ways to make money as a startup later on, right? But the student should get unbridled access to all of the content, and not just say, here are 20 chapters you can do and then you have to pay me this much per year. Right? There's too much emphasis on monetization, so growth, engagement, and monetization. Because of that, sometimes what happens is that you put lesser difficulty level questions, students feel that they're successful, right? But they're not actually successful. That engagement is fake engagement. And there are a lot of companies that have had to shut down in the edtech space because they weren't actually focused on learning outcomes.
Embibe was founded in 2012. It's been like 3 or 4 years that you're there. What are the challenges that you faced?
So I think every entrepreneur goes through a journey, and every startup goes through a journey. So I think that if I were to talk about 2 main challenges, the first is that I'd come back to India after about 9 to 10 years abroad, and I didn't really know many people. Okay, so for me personally, it was assembling the right team of passionate people, passionate about education and their functional areas, superstars in that. So we could build a team that could solve the problems that need to be solved, purpose built for it. To be able to scale a company like this. I think, knock on wood, we're now at a space where we have that team. We have some spectacular people, who are part of the Embibe team, and it is my privilege to be able to, come to the office and engage with them every day. And I learned so many new things from them. That was the first part. I think the second thing is that it's a slow growing market, even though we knew it, that was going to happen, and there is a lot of noise. Okay. I feel like, the answer to separating, what really works from what seems to work is not something which is a short-term answer, right? But the biggest value, to our mind will be created by companies that are genuinely able to make a difference, all right? So I think that, establishing clear messaging, establishing a clear signal in a market which is very noisy, which is very, trend driven, that, oh, now food tech startups are brimming, so let's everybody set up a food tech startup. Few ed tech startups get funded, now everybody wants to do an ed tech startup, right? The intention is great, but I think if there's greater sophistication, I think it'll take some time for the consumer to get educated. So I think that's the second challenge. It's around the market. But I think that it's growing by the day, our numbers are growing by the day, and we're very optimistic about what's coming.
Embibe offers different types of service. So was it difficult to convince students, there's a platform where you can get hold on to and solve all the queries?
So I don't think it was difficult. I think whenever we've talked to people about what we do, students have just jumped up and parents have wanted to pay when we used to charge. We used to charge about a year and a half ago. Now it's about, we've made a commitment as a company to stay entirely virtual, okay? Because we feel the true answer to scalability is making the hard choices early in the life of a startup. So let's say if I were to set up a call center today, then I can't grow beyond a point, right? I mean, how many different countries and different people will I be able to service by setting up a call center? So we've decided to do it the hard way, leading with data first, all right? And also, making sure that the product itself drives students, to understand the value and then perhaps, discover avenues to monetize, as opposed to, setting up different things early on. So that's basically.
Embibe was also the only startup that was invited by the Web Summit in Dublin last year. How was the experience?
It was a great experience. It was the only edtech startup. The other startup that was there in the start category was Freshdesk. And I think it's a very august company, to keep, because Girish is fantastic and because it was a product company. And I think that we're the only other true product company in the sense of being completely virtually scalable in India and in our space. And I think that people are recognizing what we're trying to do. And I think that slowly that voice will get stronger as student feedback gets stronger, right? So it was a great experience. We mingle with people, from all walks of life, all different countries. One thing which I found very interesting was that one of the hypotheses I had very early on, that emerging markets across the board suffer from a lack of personalized attention, was proven. So we had people from Ireland dropping by. I remember Israel, Nigeria. There's a guy from Nigeria who came. He says, we have a paper called the JAM, and people spend 7 years trying to clear it, and they don't have proper teaching. Because the point is, there's a lot of romanticism around learning, and we are launching, India's first open learning resource, because we value consumption of, academic content and understanding things a lot. But the truth of the matter is, when your population is so huge, evaluation only happens through a single number. And if you don't get that number right, life's opportunities elude you, right? That's the truth of emerging markets. And that was, clearly endorsed by a bunch of people. In fact, even people who took the SAT in the US saw our product and said, I would have scored higher if I had this, And I think that's true validation.
And you said you'll be launching open learning source. Tell us something about that.
So we're very excited about this feature. We call it Learn, and it's the culmination of about a year and a half of effort. So we think about it like the Khan Academy for 11th and 12th standard. Okay, we've got about 11,000 concepts that we have distilled down. To give you some perspective, there is a chapter called Cells in Biology, all right, and Khan Academy has about 5 concepts on it, and we've built about 104 odd in that chapter. It's very granular. So then what we did was we proceeded to curate a bunch of content, from the community, from other places, built it, created it, so that for any concept you can search, you can find, how many people got questions right within time, how many made careless mistakes on that concept, how many went overtime on that concept, read a description, watch the world's best videos on it, right? You can see what exams are relevant for, what skills are asked, what are the common tips for that concept. You can see Wolfram Alpha, you can see Wikipedia. So it's just one source where you can go and study it. And you can also see questions that rankers got wrong in previous years, because we have this entire database, right? And also, the toughest questions or the easiest questions on that concept. As a result of that, we believe the Khan Academy became super popular and amazing because it was so comprehensive. And this kind of a resource that joins time to the very last concept in physics ever taught and connects chemistry, maths and biology together as one web does not exist in this world. So it's bite-sized learning meets a MOOC. So this is actually Embibes MOOC.
You received learning funding last year. Mm-hmm. How have you used the funding so far?
So most of it has gone into product development, and data science and content creation to support it. So so when you're launching an exam, it's easy to launch an exam. You can put 5,000 questions, you can put 50,000 questions, you can put 100,000 questions. What we needed to do was we needed to put in 100,000 plus questions because we had to give adequate coverage to all concepts to give the right analytics, right? And every question on Embibe is tagged to 25 plus parameters. So we know everything about that question. If those tags are less, you can deliver lesser analytics. So we used, our money to be building that out properly. We also used it to, establish our outreach towards students, establish a bigger market base. This morning, I forwarded an email to the team. There were a few students from Latour using Embibe, and I saw that on my dashboard, and I was like, wow, this is really, really going wide, right? Because I think when you talk about accessibility, which was the first problem we spoke about, it feels good to wake up in the morning and see a student from Latour asking a question and then our team scrambling to gratify it.
Earlier this year, Embibe also, acquired 100 marks.
Yeah.
Can we see such more acquisition in the near future?
So I think so. I think that the answer to the education space is not one person going it alone, okay? And I don't think that, it was an acquisition. It was more like-minded, synergies from two people. I have a lot of respect for Pradeep and Anushri, who are the co-founders of 100 Marks, who are now doing another startup in the beauty space for some reason, right? But I think they joined us because they understood that this was a natural home for 100 Marks eventually, because our strategy was to do everything we can to gratify the student in his journey. And one of the blind spots every kid has is regular news and exam updates, right? Which is something that the student doesn't get. And 100 Marks had tried to make mind maps, which is very like what we were doing in Knowledge Tree, right? So I think it was a brilliant step. They were ready to move on to their next journey, and we were ready to absorb them. And we feel that the answer again in education, because of the churn, that a student comes in, he'll spend 3 months and he'll go, right? Because his exam is over, right? So for that reason, you have to keep spending money to acquire users. So what's sensible is how do you create massive organic traffic? And I think 100 Marks really helped us with that. Because they already had very good rankings around organic, and we learned how to make them even better by acquiring them and turning them around and applying our proprietary algorithms to it. So I think it was a marriage made in heaven, and I think that if there are other people, and a lot of people keep reaching out to us, who are also passionate about this space. It's a growing, it's a growing space. There are some clearly identified areas. Everybody doesn't have the answer, the complete answer, and I think it's also a space which, more than any other space, needs an egoless existence. Okay, education tech is a movement. It's not an industry, And because it's a movement, right, you got to work together. So that is why the question we ask, everybody is that how big is big and how good is good? And do you want to solve the problem, or do you want yourself to solve the problem? So whenever the answers are in the right direction, we talk about doing more together.
Local languages are also, picking up pace. So can we expect?
Absolutely. So you can't solve the access problem without that. But I think everything's a function of cash, right? So, and prioritization. So we're going to get around to it for sure. The cool part is that our technology team, we have the good fortune of having a CTO like Saurav Sachin and, a head of technology like Valliswar and Vallis, who are both ex-Flipkart. And, Flipkart is the only startup today that's across by 1,500 cities odd in India. And they've really, really worked on the access problem. And they're fantastic. And, I think, like I said earlier, it's a privilege to work with such people. So they're on the access problem, and you'll see some very exciting things from us soon on that.
And how many students are on board with Embibes?
It's about 1 million now.
About 1 million.
About 1 million.
And if you called about a differentiator, how would you define, Embibe is different from the professional coaching classes and the other?
So I think from a tech standpoint, we're an analytics first engine. You know, analytics is not a band-aid that you apply on top. It's just not possible. You have to be built for it. The second thing is, I think, the team is a big differentiator now. I think that, there are some problems that need to be solved to take EdTech and make it massive, all right? And the problem, unfortunately, cannot be solved by a group of friends. That's my personal take. And there's some excellent teams out there in the industry who are, using their own approach to attack the market. Some are monetization first, some are whatever, right? But I feel like, solving the problem of outcomes, solving the problem of accessibility, solving the problem of open content curation in the right way, and solving the problem of user acquisition, which is sustainable and organic. Okay, these 4 or 5 problems that I listed needs a custom-built team. Okay, and which we have the good fortune of having right now. So these I believe would be our biggest differentiators, which are sustainable and will keep getting better with age, right? In terms of the offline coaching centers, right? So I think we call them educators, and I feel like everybody has a different way of participating in the education space. So you have the private coaching institutes, you have the public schools, the private schools and whatnot. And I think that, if you go back to why private coaching started, there was a guy called Bloom, all right, who published a paper where he said that 98% of the students who do private coaching, all right, will do better. Okay, unfortunately today, private coaching is plagued by the same problems that public schools are plagued by, all right? There's lack of quality teachers, lack of consistent curriculum, and there's a promise of, we'll just make you go through the roof, but they're not able to provide the attention. I mean, class sizes of 1,000 plus, right? So I feel it's a huge opportunity that how do you usher in the age of the intelligent teacher, okay? I don't think the teacher is ever going to leave the classroom, but I think flipped classrooms are the opportunity.
And are you looking for more funding now?
Absolutely. So we are, about to embark upon our next raise, and we're excited to find, people who'd like to partner with us for the future, and really have a long-term sustainable play in education. See, if you look at edtech startups the world over, the most valuable of them haven't crossed $5 billion in valuation. You've got taxi companies sitting at 50, all right? But if you look at education spend, it's massive, right? So I think we're looking for people who would want to support an analytics first, data science rich, very, very strong IP, with a highly scalable strategy, and go along with us on how we want to disrupt this place. And at the same time, obviously the team has achieved a lot. So we're very optimistic about the conversations. One message I would give to all edtech entrepreneurs is just be student first. Think about what you can do that would change someone's life, and truly get after that problem. Don't try to solve a business problem before you solve the education problem, because education is a space where even if a teacher does not put out an ad for anywhere, parents and students will hunt him down, if he's produced good students. Word of mouth is our biggest friend, right? And anything that grows in the short term, may not necessarily what will grow in the long term, because you've got to be solving these problems systematically, right? And the first problem is, can you move marks up? Right? Or can you create true learning outcomes?
And do you think Embibe has able to do that so far?
Yeah. So I just mentioned to you, right, for the JE as well, 20% improvement, and we've filed some patents in that regard as well. So we're very confident about the fact that the system delivers on that. So it's taken us 3 years, and we've proven ourselves through 2 academic cycles now, which I think is what's critical, right? So that you have a result one year and result the next year, and have usage between that result, and you can correlate that usage to the actual result, and you have students standing up and talking about you. So recently I was invited to IIT Kharagpur by Embibes students, to come and talk to the first years about entrepreneurship. And we have about 30 of them coming down to intern with us now in December, people who actually used Embibe in the past. And it was great because we saw a guy from Jorhat and Assam who's part of Super 30, because Super 30 uses Embibe as well, okay? And he raised his hand and said, I used Embibe, So there were many people like that in the auditorium at IIT Kharagpur. We were at the Kalidas auditorium. It's the oldest IIT in the country, and felt very good to see it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nishant. Very good to talk to you.
Same.
Okay.